What is going on YouTube? This is MintyJosh19 and welcome back to my channel. So in this video I'm going to be going over one of the smaller factions in the known Commonwealth world, but also one of the well-known ones. And this time it is the Commonwealth Minutemen, also known as just the Minutemen. And I'm going to be giving you all a brief history on how the Minutemen were formed, what their ideologies are, their technologies, and why they ultimately fell apart by the year 2287. So to understand how all this happened, we first need to go back to when the Minutemen were actually formed. Now the Minutemen were formed in 2180, 103 years I think, after the nuclear holocaust that devastated much of the world, if not all of it. And in 2180, a group of settlers who got tired of their homesteads being ravaged by raiders and super mutants and other threats decided to band together and form a group designed to protect the Commonwealth from threats. And hence they became known as the Minutemen. Now, when they first were formed, not many people looked to the Minutemen for help. Most were weary about them, and because they were brand new, nobody knew much about them. However, in 2180, a super mutant horde was attacking Diamond City, and the people there were basically holding them off until the Minutemen showed up and protected Diamond City. After that, people began to take notice of them and realize that, hey, these guys are actually fighting for a better time. Well, as the super mutant attacks ended, more and more settlements in the Commonwealth began to basically side with the Minutemen and ask them for help. And it was because of this, the Minutemen decided to branch out. And they decided to organize the CPG, the Commonwealth Preservational Government, which was basically formed by various settlements. However, this is where things started to go wrong, in my opinion. The Institute sent their own representative there, a synth. And the CPG massacre happened because the synth ended up basically killing everybody in the room. Not one person survived. And because of this, most settlements decided to remain isolated. And the talks began to break down, and no other cooperation was held. However, the Minutemen still decided to work independently, protecting each settlement at a minute's notice, just to make sure that people could have a place to call home and not worry about the dangers such as gunners, super mutants, or now even the Institute. They established their headquarters at Fort Independence, also known as the castle, and from there they could coordinate with the different groups. Each one was led by a colonel who answered to the general, and they would be able to go to where each settlement was and protect it. At that time, the castle was occupied by the Minutemen up until 2240, when at that time the Minutemen there, under the command of General McGann, were basically enjoying the height of Minutemen power as one of the biggest factions in the Commonwealth. One night, a creature the size of a super behemoth came out of the sea and ultimately pushed the Minutemen out of the castle. And that was a huge blow to the Minutemen because not only had they lost their headquarters and their home, but they also lost radio freedom, which is how they would alert each other that a settlement needed help. Now, General McGann himself ended up perishing in this battle by protecting the armory from getting basically taken over by the Mirelurks. However, even with the loss of their base and headquarters,
When I grow up, I'm gonna have my own farm and make other people do all the work.
Did the Minutemen send you?
Yes.
the Minutemen
Help.
still...
What's going on?
There's a group of raiders out alone, stealing
Sorry about that.
food and supply. We know where they're coming from.
The Minutemen still decide
worry.
to do their
I'll take care of
jobs
those raiders.
and protect the Commonwealth at a minute's notice. However, as the years passed, 40 years since the events that happened in 2240, the Minutemen had a few different generals up until 2282, when their last general, General Joe Becker, was killed. At this point, this is where things really began to fall apart, because nobody could figure out on who should lead the Minutemen now. Because there were so many different groups that all hated each other and had rivalries. So the Minutemen didn't really have an actual command structure. And yeah. So basically, they all turned on each other. And no group wanted to help another group.
Hey,
Point it out.
Eventually, all the groups began to work independently and were up to the Quincy Massacre. Now, the Quincy Massacre was really the last final blow to the Minutemen. They went in, they answered a call for help. Colonel Hollis and his group, which consisted of a Minuteman named Preston Garvey, who was the last surviving Minuteman, a Minuteman named Josh, Emma, and what's the other one? Basically a few others. And basically what ended up happening was, since the Minutemen began to fall, the people began to leave. James Wire and his group left, Ronnie Shaw left. Basically everybody was leaving. Oh, there's Gunners Plaza right there. And because of this, nobody came to Colonel Hollis and his group's help. Not even Colonel Marbury, who Colonel Hollis was hoping would help. So when the Gunners showed up, they were led by a former Minuteman named Clint, who ultimately had switched sides, saying that the Minutemen don't have the power anymore and the Gunners do. That kind of looks like a bone right there. And since that, Clint and his Gunners ended up massacring all the settlers and the remaining Minutemen at Quincy. Now, only about 4 or 5 Minutemen remained after the battle, including Preston Garvey, Josh, Emma, Sturgis, and there was one other, couple more. However, as they moved on, the Minutemen started losing their last remaining members, including Josh and Emma at Lexington, and a few others at Concord. Now, this is when the sole survivor, your character, comes into play. The sole survivor helps out Preston Garvey and his group make the Sanctuary Hills. And then Preston Garvey will tell you to basically go and help people at 10 Pines Bluff because they still believe that there are Minutemen out there who are willing to help. So you go there, and 10 Pines Bluff becomes one of the first settlements to support the Minutemen. And because of this, Preston Garvey here says that he can't protect the whole Commonwealth. He can barely protect these 4 settlers. So he ends up turning to you and asking if you would be willing to take the role as Minuteman General. Now this is optional. You don't have to if you don't want to, but I did anyways. So you are now the General of the Commonwealth Minutemen. And because of this, basically you become the beacon of hope that the Commonwealth needs by taking back and building settlements and taking the Minutemen HQ at Fort Independence back from the Mirelurks. And because of this, older veterans such as Ronnie Shaw return to help with the armory because she built it along with General McGann. And inside the armory, the Minutemen then have access to their artillery guns, which are large mortar-style artillery guns mounted that you can build up at all the settlements. And now the Minutemen have a leader, and they are now stronger than ever. Now, the Minutemen perhaps are probably the best option to save the Commonwealth. You can align yourself with the other factions, such as the Brotherhood of Steel, the Institute, or the Railroad. However, when you side with any of these factions, you are required to kill some of your companions. In the Brotherhood of Steel, you are told you needed to kill Deacon and the Railroad, along with Paladin Dance, who turns out to be a synth, and X688, I think is his name. And then if you decide to, with the Institute, you need to kill Dance and Deacon still. However, you don't need to align yourself with these factions any more than you have to. So basically, once the Institute's destroyed, you could go in and take out the Brotherhood of Steel by launching an artillery barrage called Operation Order of the Phoenix on top of the Pridwin, and it ultimately will fall because there's a Pridwin right there. In which case, a battle at Fort Independence happens with the surviving Brotherhood of Steel members rally to try and take over. The Railroad, you can always just destroy them any way you want. The Institute, however, either way, if you decide to side with the Brotherhood, the Railroad, or the Minutemen, you end up just basically nuking them. But if you choose to side with one, you can tell Preston Garvey that the Institute is not our enemy. I can't go any further this way, I don't think. I should be able to. I'm nowhere near the edge of the map. Huh. Oh well. Anyway. Yeah, you can side with the Institute. You can side with the Brotherhood. Or you can side with the Railroad. Now, I usually side with the Brotherhood, just because they have some of the better weapons and technology. But this time, I'm actually going to side with the Institute. You know, just because I can. So, yep. Basically, that's it. They fell to, the Minutemen fell to pieces because. Whoa. Rust those. yeah, the Minutemen basically fell to pieces because they had poor leadership and lost basically their only HQ they had at the time. And the other groups had bad blood between them. So, in the meantime, thank you for watching. Let me know if you want me to do any more history videos on the factions of the Fallout world, including that of the NCR, the Legion, the Gunners, the Great Khans, the Enclave, basically any of them. So in the meantime, thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments below what you think of the video. And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. And let me know if you have any more interesting facts on the Minutemen that you would like to share. In the meantime, I'm going to keep on fighting this Mylar Queen. So, yep. In the meantime, have a good weekend. Have a good rest of your weekend. And I will see you all next time. Have a good night.